guess final thing, something we haven't spoken about is breakups. And is there anything to say from an evidence-based perspective on what getting over a breakup looks like? Is that even an area of
Yeah,
research?
it is, and it's pretty fascinating. Oh, I should have brushed up on this one. This one has a lot to do with neuroscience. In fact, I bet Huberman could tell you a lot on it. And actually, I would listen to that in a heartbeat. But what we do know is that people actually have a drug withdrawal like response to a breakup. So you were getting this oxytocin from the love relationship and also from the familiarity. There are a couple different reasons for this. When you're in a relationship, you have these patterns of things you do with your partner. And if you were very close and together for a long time, there's the stress of disentangling your lives. And if you have to move, that's one of the most stressful life events there is a relocation. So you're dealing with that. Then you also had, breakfast together on Sundays or TV day on Saturdays when you're both wiped or hungover, or uh, you'd go to your parents on Sunday afternoon, or whatever those little rituals were, you had them and they were built in. Now you're going to have these empty pockets of time that aren't filled with these familiar comforts. So that's disrupting as it is and stressful. But on top of that, you're not getting the physical touch and intimacy. You're not getting the romantic love if you're in the early stages of the relationship. And so you're actually having this withdrawal syndrome. And it's going to feel a lot like drug addiction. So there are a couple different things you can do recognizing
Yeah.
that. When you are addicted to drugs, when you're going through withdrawal, your body wants more of that drug. It wants that hit of oxytocin. And so you're going to start fantasizing and thinking wholly about that thing you want. And that means you're going to idealize the relationship, you're going to idealize your ex, and it's just the way you would start to obsess about that drug. So what do we have addicts do when we know that they're going to start idealize the drug, they're going to start having cravings? We have them remember, they counter that thought with a thought about what they have to lose. And we might counter it also with a memory of rock bottom. And so you have to recognize that these are fantasies, they are not realistic. These are idealizations of something that isn't true. And so you take those rose-colored glasses off, the ones that we want you to have on the whole relationship, you take them off and you remember what it was like the time he left you in the parking lot and you didn't have a way to get home. Or I don't know, you think of the worst times. And then you also need to find positive activities to fill those empty pockets. So where somebody was using in the past, now they have to, call their sponsor or they go do something enjoyable like work out. You do the same thing when you used to do brunch with your partner or whatever else it was that is making you miss them suddenly. So call a friend, go to brunch with a friend. I I have this weird thing where I love cheap magazines. To me, it's like doesn't harm you because it's not junk food and it's kind of a quick fix and I can look at fashion and stuff. And as long as I don't shop, I love that as like a quick hit of oxytocin. Just gives me a little thrill. Everybody's got one of those weird little things. So you plan ahead. You got your magazines ready, whatever it is, and you start filling those empty spaces. And then third, you also need to recognize that as you get more tired in the day, your executive functioning decreases. So that same frontal lobe that you need to manage an argument effectively with your partner, you also need that to exercise any good judgment and to remind yourself of why you broke up with a person. That's why you might notice like you pine a little bit more for your ex at night, or you call them at night, or you just get, nighttime is never great. As soon as you start to get tired and your frontal lobe goes down, you're just going to be a little bit less reserved, a little bit less controlled, a little bit less aware of all the good reasons you made this smart decision. So go to bed.
Right, that's the
Go
answer
to
to a lot
bed.
of problems. Just go to bed, yeah, and put
Yeah.
your phone away. No, that it's very interesting. I actually asked Huberman this question probably about 3 years ago, and he started talking about the neuroscience of grief.
Oh,
So he said that the way that it works with grief is there is a an area of our brain which is expecting our ability to connect with that person, and that has been taken away.
Don't mind me.
I can send you the link to the clip
That would
afterwards.
actually be much
But he's,
more. I just had this urge to start taking
yeah,
note. Okay,
yeah,
keep going.
yeah. The professional nerd in
It's
the room as
weird.
opposed to the unprofessional nerd. Yeah, basically that it's like grief, right? That you've lost somebody, that they're dead, but the unique pain that you get from a breakup is that the person is still accessible. Maybe they don't care about you anymore, and they're with
Oh,
somebody
yes.
new that they moved
Yes.
on with.
Mhm.
Maybe you left them, and you've got this sense of guilt, and there is still going to be this sense of
The
missing them. So
existential messiness of it all.
yeah, like imagine a type of death where somebody dies, but you can get them back
Mhm.
briefly, but you have to pay a very high price in order to do it. And you can do that over and over and over and over again. So it's his opinion, I think, that from a sort of neurobiology perspective, you're looking at the same pathways that you get in grief. And yeah.
Definitely, and that is a known thing, although it's fascinating to hear his neurological perspective. So from my framework, the psychological framework, we just talk about how difficult and complex this emotion is, this loss is. It's complex sort of bereavement because it's not simple. It's not just a loss of a person. They still exist. There are complex feelings of jealousy or diminishment or guilt, as you said. If you were the one who ended it, it is nonetheless a loss and a lot to learn and navigate with that. Um, I am reminded of Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love, the book. And I don't know if any of your listeners will be familiar with it, especially if it's a primarily male audience. But there is this incredible part in the end. She actually so in this book, she's navigating a really brutal divorce from somebody who she loves very much, but they grew apart. They'd gotten married young. And her life, as she says, is, it's unimaginable to even imagine staying together, yet unimaginable to imagine splitting up. They do split up. And at some point in this, she goes to an ashram in India and she devotes herself to spiritual practice, brutal spiritual practice, like meditation on her knees for 8 hours of meditating and imagining somebody she wishes well to and health to. And then at one point, she realizes she still has this cloying pain, this wound from the loss of her marriage, which she nonetheless initiated, but this absolute grief deep in her soul. And anybody, I think, who has been divorced or has gone through one of these major losses of love can attest to this. It can feel like a cancer in you that just lingers. And she is a friend of hers recommends that she goes up to the roof of he recommends that she meditate and essentially talk to him in that state. And at risk of sounding a little too woo-woo, what I will say is that she has this profound peak experience in a meditative state and feels that she's able to that separation is not so finite as we perceive, and that she was able to connect to him mentally, whether it was psychological, spiritual, and there was a wisdom there that she was also able to connect with, where she realized that none of this was bad, and that on a much larger level, it was all okay. And so she kind of cartwheels off, very relieved and happy. That secretly, not so secret anymore, is a passage that I'll give to some of my clients who are navigating devastating heartache, where the contact has been cut, and it just feels so painful and empty. And it provides, I think, a little bit of an avenue for reconnection or healing.
Isn't it funny? We're just, shaven primates trying to make sure that the next generation comes along, and all of this stuff comes for the ride. You just have these complex psychological mechanisms, and but what about your childhood? What about the inner voice and where that's come from? And you got to think about, the foundation of the house needs to be friendship first, and then you got to do the thing. It's like, hey, dude, I'm a fucking grandchild optimizing machine that has become self-aware. Like I'm like ChatGPT 9 or something. And did we ask for this? I don't feel like I asked for this. And but this is why it's interesting. It's interesting because you know the idea of spandrels. You must know the idea of
No.
spandrels. Oh, okay. So it's I don't know whether the word actually exists outside of psychology, but it exists. The best example is you were an alien that comes down to Earth, and you look at a light bulb, and somebody
Okay.
was to say, "What's the job of an old school style light bulb, one from 50 years ago?" And they'd say, "What's the job of that light bulb?" And you say, "Well, it's obvious. The job of the light bulb is to give off heat. Look at how much heat it's giving off."
Mm-hmm.
And you go, interesting comment. No, job of the light bulb is to give off light. That heat is a byproduct. So we didn't mean to give off the heat, but in order to give off the light, we gave off the heat. And it's kind of like the entirety of everything that we're dealing with here.
Our entire
of
toiling.
fucking spandrels. They're all just spandrels, like that we've had to try and find ways to compensate and work around, a very ungainly God when it came to him designing the sort of way that men and women interrelate. I mean, he's tired. It's late on a Saturday afternoon. He's had an edible. And, you're thinking, this bit, there was some slickness. Look at the beauty of a swordfish swimming through the sea, and look at, the sort of majesty of the night sky, and there's this simplicity and all the rest of it.
I do the same thing. I compare a cool animal to us. And I was like, man, God had way more fun with this one. Like, maybe this was in the beginning of the project where he, was a little more grandiose about it and excited and spending more time and detail on something, having fun with it. And then at the end,
he really had to rush it toward the end. He was like, I've got so many Slack notifications. Yeah, my fucking Trello board is a nightmare. And honestly, that second edible's looking really good. So I'm just going to send this and hope for the best. The code that you wrote this with is a little bit messy. It's like, yeah, it'll be fine.